Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I have the main point to this video is to talk about Michelle Obama's, I don't want to say hypocritical, I don't know what the right word is, but her response to the Meghan Markle versus the Queen and the Crown debacle. We'll get into that in just a moment. But first, I want to start off building up to this with another trailer from Disney's Cruella de Vil. And it starts here. It starts off with playing the 1960s classic, Nancy Sinatra classic of These Boots Were Made for Walking, right? So this is a very feminist song. It was considered a feminist song because it is, right? It's a feminist song. And so that's what it represents in the beginning of this movie or this trailer. These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra hit #1 and inspired a generation of independent women. 10 noteworthy proto-feminist anthems. And #2 is These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra. You keep lying. You keep lying. You're a liar, you man. Man, you liar. You lying man. But you ain't been right yet. You ain't been right yet. What's right is right, but you ain't been right yet, man. You man. These boots are made for walking. These boots is made for walking. They're not running boots. They're not sitting boots. They're walking boots. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. Some excellent dancing there. This was the 60s. So you have to understand what they're saying here, right? By playing that song, which has, various connotations of feminism and women walking all over their men when their men mistreat them or whatever it is, right? That this is creating a protagonist here in Cruella de Vil.
It's a world of opportunity.
And so she is somebody with ambition, right? They're setting this up. Let's look at how they're framing this in this trailer, this narrative. Because previous to this, how did we know Cruella de Vil? In both the original movie and the live-action movie, Cruella de Vil was a weird-looking, villainous woman, played by Glenn Close in the real-action movie, that wanted to make a fur coat out of cute little Dalmatian puppies. She was a puppy killer. You understand this? And her last name was Devil. And so there was no gray area here. She was a puppy killer just because she wanted to wear them as a fur coat. And, and she was evil to the core. She was the prototypical villain. She wanted this, this Dalmatian coat. She wanted a spotted Dalmatian coat. And she's willing to kill 101 dogs, puppies, most of them, to get it, right? And so she was a puppy killer. You understand this? You can't make a puppy killer into a hero, or can you?
I was meant for more in this life. You
keep saying you got something for me. And so they've changed up the, song a little bit. They had some hardcore sort of heavy metal rock behind it, but it's the same song. And she's been kept down. She's a woman who's been kept down. And so they're reframing this puppy killer, somebody who wants to kill dogs and wear them as coats, which is pretty much universally. I mean, what kind of approval rating do you think puppy killers get? A 1% maybe? 2% of the population, people who are into puppy killing? I mean, what is it? What's the percentage? But now they're spinning this as some sort of empowerment, like she's being empowered. She has been kept down by the man, and she's got ambition. She wants to break the glass ceiling. Nothing wrong with Cruella de Vil. She's just a misunderstood woman who's been kept down by the man.
I want to make art. And I want to make trouble.
Also, she's a rebel, right? She wants to make art and she wants to make trouble. Now, I covered this in another video where the way that they portrayed the Dalmatians is like demon dogs. They don't do this, I don't think, in this trailer. But she wants to make art and she wants to make trouble. And I'm, framing this because we're going to go back to the Queen and Meghan Markle's and Michelle Obama in just a moment. But they can frame anything any way they want now. They can take a hero or a villain. They can take a hero and turn it into a villain. But more importantly, they can take a villain, somebody who, is a puppy killer and, a puppy murderer. I mean, not somebody who's like even killing them to eat or something because you're starving, just to wear them as fur, and is, a clear villain, and turn them into a person who has an edge, right? She has an edge. She wants to make trouble. She's not going to just sit down and play her part and not speak her mind. She's a rebel, right? Like, these are the way they're framing this character in this video.
Whether you have the killer instinct is the big question. I hope I do.
She has the killer instinct, and that's good, especially for women nowadays. Now, I've talked about this over the years, that when I played basketball, competitive basketball, if you were called soft, you were basically supposed to fight the person that called you soft, right? I mean, it's just this, sports mentality that you're supposed to be hard. Of course, Kobe Bryant, I gave the example of him, the Black Mamba, to somebody with, killer instinct and crushing your opponent and things like this, dominating your opponent, which we've been trained to do our whole lives as Americans, very aggressive culture. And then when I started doing the heartfulness meditation, and I learned being sensitive and soft were valued and valuable on the spiritual path. Someone with a sensitive heart, a soft heart, is somebody who can connect with God and, become a loving person. It's part of what happens to people when they do the heartfulness meditation. They are softened, their aggression, their edge. We're told to be edgy, right? This character is supposed to be edgy. You're supposed to have edge. You're supposed to go after. You're supposed to crush your opponent. You're supposed to have the killer instinct. And they're making this be a good thing, right? And especially for a woman. Before it was men that you were supposed to, all men were supposed to have a killer instinct. And it's easier for men. And it's worse for women because women, it's not good for a mom to have a killer instinct, right? To have this attitude of me against my children, right? Like, you have this attitude where you're competing with everybody and everything. You have this edge. And so for a mom, it's not a good thing, right? When mom has to protect her children, sure. That's, there's a natural inborn ferocity there. But this isn't what this is about. She's not protecting her children. She's going out there to crush and kill and destroy puppies. She's crashing the party. It's status quo. There's this woman here played by Emma Thompson, and this rebel who just wants to succeed and fight the man and be edgy. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And, kill a few puppies on the way. Nothing wrong with that. She's crashing the party. She's a party crasher. She's a rebel. She's the future. She's wearing a mask, and she's a painted mask, and she's the future with this Freemasonic hairdo, right? Black and white, the Freemasonic floor. She's the future. This is the future, everybody. This, glorified puppy killer. Cruella. It's Cruella everywhere. She's taking over the party, and she's cruel. She's Cruella. Her first name's Cruella. Her last name is Devil. She's the protagonist. She's the hero. Meet the Queen, right? And we're talking about this with the Queen. Blood dripping off. She's the Queen. Like, again, this idea of, I've talked about this, being a queen, the whole concept of royalty is abusive. And this is, they're sponging in on this. Of course, it takes place in England. The Queen of Mean. So you go back here, we'll play this again, right? Look at they do have the Dalmatians. They have these demon dogs, right? These Dalmatians with the circles under his eyes, growling. This is how the Dalmatians are being portrayed, as these evil demon dogs. And that somehow, she is right to kill puppies and kill dogs for her coat. They're making the Dalmatians the villains, right? Like, this is how the Dalmatians were portrayed before. We showed you this. And here I had this picture of a comparison from my previous video. And they've put this out there, Cruella. And so, like this is, again, turning something upside down, inverting it. Where the Dalmatians, these innocent dogs, what right do they have, these evil dogs, to want to live and not have their fur claimed by this feminist icon who has the killer instinct, who's obviously the hero? These dolphins should just give up their coats, stop growling and being evil, right? Come on, bro, like just give up your coat. Lay down and give up your coat. This is the hero's Cruella.
I am woman.
She is woman. This is the new woman. This is the future. This is what these evil demonic women who are obviously Satan worshipers and want to kill puppies. She's the new woman.
Yeah.
There it is, devil. She's the devil, right? She's the new woman, the devil worshiping woman, right? She's the new woman, the new protagonist, the new feminist woman. This is, all good stuff. She's the queen of mean, the devil.
Hear me roar.
Hear her roar. She's the lion. She's taking names, kicking ass and taking names. So you see how they frame this, right? All these different qualities that are popular now. The killer instinct, the woman with ambition who wants to break the glass ceiling. And they're taking a villain, a puppy-killing villain, and turning it into a hero. And something that represents all the qualities a woman doesn't need to be a mom, like being a loving, empathetic, having a loving heart, having a soft heart, certainly not wanting to kill puppies for a fur coat. All of these things, right, are, negative to be the most important job, I've said over and over again, is being a mother in society, because you teach children how to love. A loving mother. Women are given the capacity to love more so than men, and love God and connect with God, and no social structure. I mean, there's just all this innate knowledge that comes with incarnating as a woman, as a potential mother. And so this is the area that women can really uplift and guide society in the right direction, guide men. They have, this ability of loving and understanding nature and, various types of social etiquettes and things like this. There's the third master of the heartfulness system said that women are the arbiters of morality, that women, have a natural sense of divine morality and divine laws and things like this. And they can hold a structure, a society, on the right path. Their husbands guide them, guide their children, teach their children how to love, teach their children about God and nature and respecting life, right? Things like this. And so, when you turn women into killer instinct, warrior type of, violent creatures and having all these selfish ways of being in the world, which is what they're doing here. And again, the queen, we're going to get back to the queen, the real queen, in a moment, then you have a situation where your society is inverted and satanic. They try to bring down the women because when they get the women, they get the children and ultimately the men. Because men often look towards women to guide them in a lot of areas of life and behaviors. And when women aren't checking them and saying, no, let's not go to war, settle down, right? Let's think about this before we go to war and do, killer instinct, violent things. But when women have been turned to be more aggressive than men, then who's the voice of reason and peace, right? When men are, gung-ho with testosterone to go off and, do stupid stuff, and women are like, yeah, go do that stupid stuff, then you have a society the way it is now.
All right, we should put on some music or something. Lighten the mood.
She's funny. That was funny. She's got a good sense of humor. And so that's Cruella. So I'm in the editing process, and there's more stuff, important stuff to come here with Michelle Obama and Queen Elizabeth and their relationship and what she said about Meghan Markle's and something about Saturday Night Live as well. But I thought it was important to put this part in here about a distinction between my videos and my point of view and most people who think that they're woke, think that they're awakened, whatever you want to, whatever group you want to talk about, right? Because there's a lot of people that are saying you need to wake up, and we're going to wake up, and we got to wake everybody up, and you got to be woke and all these things, right? It's a commonly used term right now. And the difference to what I'm saying here and what most of these groups, truther groups, feminism groups, people that want racial justice, all these various groups that are out there, liberal groups, conservative groups, Trump supporters, QBs, what all these other groups, the majority of these other groups are saying is that there's an elite power structure, whatever they frame the villain as, right? If you're a truther, it's the so-called elite. If you're a Trumper, it's the deep state. If you're a feminist, it's the man, right? It's, white male privilege, it's the man. If you're a person for racial justice, a Black Lives Matter person, it's the white man, right? Or white people. Most of the liberal groups, LGBTQ, most of the other various demographics, it's the white power structure, the white male power structure. That's the villain for the Democrats. It's Trump and the people that put Trump up there, the QBs and the Trump supporters now. If you're a Trumper, it's Joe Biden and the deep state and the left and all these things. So there's these various ways of attributing power, who's responsible for the power structure, and then there's a solution given by each group to remove the power structure and then have your group, the group that you belong to, take over the power structure. And that will solve the problem. So that's what the majority of people who think of themselves as awakened or woke or whatever it is, that there's this power structure that has to be taken down, and the system is basically good. And if they replace the power structure, if their group becomes who's in power, they can fix the system, and the system can be healed, get rid of the deep state, get rid of Trump, get rid of Biden, get rid of the man, right? Get rid of the white man, whatever it is, right? Each group thinking that if they get rid of the power structure, the evil person or group in charge of the power structure, that they can save the system. Because the system is good, but these people have perverted a good system and turned it bad, right? And, you might be a financial person, get rid of the bankers, whatever you attribute the evil to. And what I say over and over again, the system itself is the problem. Like, we're all the problem because we're creating the system. Whatever negativity we have in ourselves, whatever ways that we've gone along with this or our ancestors have gone along with this system, the beastly system, it is fundamentally taking us in the wrong direction. It's a hedonistic system. It's based in materialistic pleasure and sensory stimulation, and it breaks people away from, well, first of all, their relationship with God. That's religion included. There's people who think religion is the villain and atheism or science is the solution, right? Again, another way of being woke, being scientifically awoken. Or, for example, like Trump's solution is let's make America great again, right? They're liberals. It's let's science rule and get rid of God and the idea of this and that, traditional things. And that's what's holding us back. We got to be progressive. We got to go into a progressive type of situation in the future. And so everyone has their solutions. And what I say over and over again is the system, its whole orientation towards life and who we are as human beings right now is the problem. Our orientation towards life, a pleasure-based life, disconnected from God, selfish, competitive, having a killer instinct, being, a diva, all these things that are celebrated. Our society says having a killer instinct is good, crushing your opponent is good, being a diva, having a big ego, being a celebrity, being rich and famous, being more powerful, being a king or a queen. Talking about how everyone attributes royalty, especially now the queen even is bigger, and we'll come back to that with the Michelle Obama queen stuff in a bit. But this is the way that people view the goal of their life. Wealth, power, fame, and things like this. And, having a good materialistic life and living selfishly, enjoying your life at other people's expense or the expense of the planet and other species, harvesting resources in a selfish way. And that's our system. That's our beastly system. And so what I say over and over again, and you can easily see it, it's just, do you want to see it, right? Do you want to see that this is a bad system and our orientation towards life is, going in the wrong direction? We're not following our spiritual path, our soul's path. We're not treating the earth and other species, other people with respect. We're competitive and selfish by nature, and we're like a cancer on this world, on this planet, because of our orientation towards life, what we think life is about and all the rest of it. I mean, that's the problem. If you look into it, you'll see that the system is hurting all of us and hurting the world. And it isn't just getting rid of the people who control the system, because it'll just be us turning into them. Because to control the system, the debt-based economy, the religion that blocks people's connection to God, all the distractions and medications and things that you need in your entertainment world and in your physical system, the addictions, the self-medication or the psychological medication you need to hide the pain and loneliness and suffering that everybody's going through because of living in the wrong way, going in the wrong direction, and being disconnected from God and their soul. And so this is, it's a systemic problem. I say this over and over again. The system can't be saved. The system is bad for us, and it's run its course. And so my point here, it's just like I feel like it's my duty to put this information out. I also present a solution here, the heartfulness meditation that I do, connecting to God internally, a system that's built for this specific time, right? And accepting the situation that we're 100% dependent on a system that's bad for us and it's going to collapse. See, we don't have to do anything to bring the system down. It's collapsing of its own, depravity, and it's just time. It's, life expectancy is over. Its time is up. And so knowing that, for people who can accept that, who can understand, even on a sense of, maybe not able to do anything in this life, but at least realizing that this system, it needs to go, that it's bad for us, it's corrupt on every level, it's totaled, like a car is totaled, doesn't work anymore, and it's eventually going to collapse in the near future, within the next, 100 years, I don't know what it is. And there's no reboot, there's no reset, there's no restructuring to make the system good or whole or divinize it, make it natural, make it something that's positive. And so being 100% dependent on that, it's scary. I say this over and over again. But if you just, breathe it in and you look around you and you see this, you see that the system is bad for us and it's taking us in the wrong direction, then you start thinking about, well, what would be better? Like, what can we do to make a better system? What can we do within ourselves so that we get rid of the negativity that's in us, the selfishness, the greed, the fear, the, depravity, whatever it is, the hatred, all the things that are inside us personally. And this is the cleaning aspect of the heartfulness system. What can we do to cleanse our internal world and then have a world that would have an internal world that would manifest a better system, a better world outside of ourselves? Because we're collectively manifesting this system. This is our creation, right? It's not God's creation. It's not the, dolphins' creation. It's not the Dalmatians' creation. It's not the, hawk's creation. It's not the amoeba or worm's creation. It's a human creation. This system that is a plague on this planet and on ourselves. And so once you accept that, then, again, we're still dependent on the system and we still have to go through our own transformation on a material level. But at least internally, we can accept that the system's bad and there's no solution for it. There's no repair. And then we can start working on something else, also creating a better internal world, a divinized internal world connected to God on a deeper level, because it's a reality check. And that's, what I do here on a regular basis, because so much of what you hear from people, oh, these are the bad guys. If we just get rid of the bad guys and we put the good guys in, the system will be good. No, it's not, that's not possible. Why are you wasting your time and energy on something that's, just some pipe dream that doesn't have any basis in reality. Going back to our regularly scheduled programming here. The next thing before we get to Michelle Obama is an SNL skit called Mirror Workout. Was actually potentially funny. There are a few bits, I didn't laugh, but I thought it was, kind of humorous. It wasn't necessarily funny, but it had potential. It wasn't the usual piece of crap you see from Saturday Night Live. It was this mirror that these two guys got with these various people in the mirror, were showing them how to work out. And this woman is trapped in the mirror, played by Kate McKinnon, who actually does a good job here. It was one of the few sketches in Saturday Night Live that I was like, hey, this could have gone somewhere. But of course, it always goes the same place, right? And it was interesting because this was recommended over and over again in my YouTube feed, almost like YouTube was trying to tell me that there was something demonic here, right?
And it was a rat.
So with Saturday Night Live, there's always a demon, right? There's always going to be a devil or a demon or pedo stuff. I mean, this was the episode with one of the Jonas brothers, and there was already stuff in this. I think I covered some of the sketches already, maybe a couple weeks ago when this episode aired, that had pedo stuff and had creepy stuff, because it always does. This is Saturday Night Live's new thing. And here they have this demon played by, the ghoulish Pete Davidson.
Work! Yes. Apologies.
Work. He's telling her to work in this mirror where she's caught in this alternative dimension.
Apologies, Azuzel guards.
It's Azuzel, and she's asking for help from these guys in the mirror.
Breathe into the stretch.
Work, my Shannon.
And then this Jonas brother, who I guess apparently has been working out. He doesn't want to be a boy band member anymore. He wants to work out. He wants to have big muscles.
No, Azuzel, she's not in her frame. Quick, she's disobeying.
So they're all working to keep this woman in this dimension.
Praise to Azuzel. And
praise to Azuzel. And then she tricks him. See, there's Baphomet. Azuzel has Baphomet on his chest. And this guy gets put in the mirror, and the woman gets out.
Give yourselves an Invictus Domisul.
what?
Invictus Domisul.
What the hell?
Why am I in here? You are Shannon now. Work!
Pete Davidson really went for it. So you understand this. They have now gone full demon. Like the Hollywood culture has gone full devil worshiping. Like this is what's ended up being what Hollywood's about. Where they used to put out movies and narratives, especially kids stuff with, wholesomeness and family stuff. But the villain was always sort of, interesting. The villain had a little bit more of a character development and things like this. I mean, if you look back at all these movies, a good villain was the key to any successful movie that had, the good versus evil. But now they've reversed all of this, where evil is considered good. And this is playing out in society, where things that used to be considered bad are good. And, they're just making it okay. Like sometimes they condemn people who are doing evil stuff, but in reality, they're just saying, yeah, this is what's done. This is the way we are. And it's okay. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to be evil. Which brings us to Michelle Obama and the Queen. So this is Jenna Bush, and she is a very odd person. She's interviewing Michelle Obama. I did a video on them together before. And they talk about Meghan Markle's here.
I wonder, when you watched Meghan Markle speak out, what went through your mind?
Public service, it's a bright, sharp, hot spotlight. And most people don't understand it, nor...
So first of all, this is what the royal family always says. It's not public service. You're not serving the public. This is where you have a group of people who have a privileged class, right? They are a ruling class, a privileged class. And this is the president. This is politicians. They all have their hand in the till. And they all have, they have big egos and a desire to rule. And they're not public servants. They're not serving the public. I mean, this is what they say, and this is how they frame what they're doing, but they are exploiting the people that are below them, the people they're supposed to be serving.
The thing that I always keep in mind is that none of this is about us in public service.
It's 100% about you. It's about big egos and big personalities and being out there, dressing in fancy clothes and going to balls and being a brand. It's 100% about being a political celebrity, and the Queen even more so, right? The royal family even more so. It is about being a celebrity and being an iconic person and having a legacy and things like this. It's not about other people. It's not about your wanting to serve other people.
It's about the people that we serve. I always try to push the light back out and
Exactly. Whenever light enters into her, she pushes it back out. Like it just, she wants to have inner darkness. In the heartfulness system, we meditate on divine light. And you're acknowledging the divinity, the divine love that's within you, and you're cultivating that. And then the light emanates out from the source, which is God. But the way she said it is she pushes the light back out. As soon as light gets in there, into this void of darkness inside of me, I push it back out. We can't have any light in there.
focus it on the folks that we're actually here to serve.
Serve for dinner.
But what about when she talked about the fact that she experienced racism? I mean, I feel like that was heartbreaking to hear that she felt like she was in her own family. Her own family thought differently of her.
She said she felt like it wasn't necessarily true. Like she was just talking about her feelings. Like it's whether it actually happened or not that's important.
Of her.
Race isn't a new construct in this world for people of color. So it wasn't a complete surprise to hear her feelings and to have them articulated. I think the thing that I hope for.
Of course it wasn't a complete surprise. The royal family at its core is racist. And racist isn't really the correct word because it's beyond that. It's abusive on many levels. The whole idea of royalty, and I've said this before, is that you have royal blood, and your blood is somehow better than other people's blood. And Michelle Obama should know this already because it was controversial that she touched the Queen. Remember? Michelle Obama's G20 faux pas brings out Queen's touchy-feely side. Queen Elizabeth was happy to hug Michelle Obama and show affection and respect for her because, she was allowed to touch her. I mean, this was a controversy. Michelle Obama tells her side of the story about the time she broke royal protocol and touched Queen Elizabeth. This was controversial because she wasn't supposed to touch the Queen in this way, where she hugged her, right? And everybody gasped because an American commoner, touched the Queen. And this was big news. You're not allowed to touch the Queen because she's so far above everybody else, right? Like, think about that. That this was a scandal when Michelle Obama hugged the Queen. And you see here's another, thing of here they are together, that creepy dude, and the family. And she was there celebrating the royal family with full knowledge. I know that she must know that the whole idea behind royalty is abusive, and Michelle Obama should know that slavery began under British rule, slavery in America. So what we know as slavery in America, which is the big point here, right? This is the centerpiece of American racism, there was a brutal slavery because there's different levels of slavery. And the American slavery was a particularly brutal one. And it started with the British. I mean, there was a British company. So there was the Royal African Company, which was, here it says, it was led by Duke of York, who was the brother of Charles II, and later took the throne as James II. It shipped more African slaves to America than any other institution in the history of Atlantic slave trade. And so the British royal family, the line of the British royal family, had made money and profited and really was the people who started modern day slavery and the slavery in America. The royal family made its fortune from slave traders, some slave trade readers' letters. There's these various letters about this. This is something, that's well known, or should be. Michelle Obama should know this. The royal family still benefits from its major role in the slave trade. Of course it does. I'll come back to this. The royal family can't keep ignoring its colonialist past, and racist present. The throne of blood. It's time for the British royal family to make amends for centuries of profiting from slavery. So if you think about the cancel culture, what just happened with the Bachelor show, and cancel culture for stuff is, using words or having certain attitudes or beliefs where people are getting dragged for words and beliefs. But then you have a royal family. Like you have people in America whose ancestors used to own slaves, but now they're many generations removed from that. But then you have the British royal family, which is a line of succession. And the kings and queens of the past, many of them, created the slavery, or a big part of the slavery that existed in Britain and in America. They owned slave ships. They owned Africa, right? They invaded Africa. They had a stranglehold on Africa, and they went and took slaves and brought them to America and back to England. And so what you have is a direct line, a lineage to the roots of slavery, worse than anybody else, more accountable, the British royal family. And of course, they were in charge of America when the slavery in America began. So they're more responsible, and they still exist as an entity where you have these families, these plantations, these slave owners in the South that have been broken up and whatever, right? They've changed, their families changed, and many of whom don't have any power left. But the British royal family has more power than ever, and they still have all the loot, all the money, all the influence they received from the profitable slave industry. You understand this? So the Queen, more than anybody else, is responsible for modern day racism. Her family, her line of succession, and they have, 6.6 billion acres of land, 18% of the land in the world. I mean, they still have all these resources and power and influence over these countries that they colonized and profited from. And so if you want to blame anybody, if you want to cancel anybody and have them atone for these, this system of abuse, then it would be them, right? And Michelle Obama, who's advocating for these things, advocating for this change, this consciousness, and she went over and slathered all over the Queen, right?
And the thing I think about is that this first and foremost is a family, and I pray for forgiveness and healing for them so that they can use this as a teachable moment for us all.
They can't teach anything. And so I want to show you a clip of the crown here in just a moment. But here you have the dollar bill, the capstone of the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill, which is a Freemasonic symbol, Illuminati symbol. It's part of the Great Seal of America. It's an official picture and documentation of what America's about. But it's a global thing here. There's a video out there, the Freemasonic a Freemasonic celebration. It was like on Halloween or something, 2017. One of the Queen's cousins or brothers or something like this was there. Not brother, but one of her relatives, probably a cousin or something. And he was the head of the Freemasonic Lodge in Britain. And they showed all these pictures and celebrated how they've influenced the world. Of course, the Illuminati's a part of that, right? But anyways, you have up here this ruling class that's above everybody else. So they're up here. The Queen's a part of this, the president, and the shadow government, people with lots of money that are in the shadows are up here and they're ruling down here. And they're being propped up because that's how a pyramid works, right? All the people down here, a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, are propping up this part of the system, right? This part of the beastly system, the controlling part. And these people claim to be servants, but they are enjoying a lifestyle and privileges that the people down here don't have. But the main part of the pyramid that's abusive is if anybody threatens this structure, even people in this part, like there's members of the royal family and people who have a moment of conscience, right? They have a soft heart, they have empathy for the people down here, and they express it, and they have to be crushed or killed or thrown out or reprogrammed or whatever it is. And same thing for people down here. You're allowed to complain up to a certain point, and then you're considered a problem, and they got to crush you. And so the system exists in an abusive way, where the beastly system has all these ways of making sure that the system stays strong and that you are, that you adhere to it. And so let's go to this clip of the Crown show that illustrates what I'm talking about.
Colluded with Israel in any way.
So for copyright reasons, I can't show you the long pauses, but it's an excellently made show. I've said this before. And this is based in historical events. So this is the new prime minister. I forget his name. He's succeeding Winston Churchill. He's in severe pain, is on some sort of opiates, and he gets into a mano-a-mano struggle with the leader, the ruler of Egypt, and Egypt has just seized the Suez Canal. There's this canal built sort of by Britain, built by the Egyptian people, but ruled by Britain, that all these ships are able to pass through and get oil. All kinds of European ships are able to pass through this canal to get oil, which they need. And so Egypt is one of the British Commonwealth nations, and Egypt decides to revolt, which, is their right and probably their duty to do. Britain is sucking off them as a colonial parasite. And so he just told this story to the Queen here, who's sort of getting a lesson in duplicity and all these conspiracies and collusion, because he says that he just found out that Israel has moved their troops into Egypt towards the Suez Canal, and that he has worked something out with France to go in there and act as peacekeepers. And he has sort of a mano-a-mano thing going on with the Egyptian leader, plus he wants to sort of, define himself after living in Churchill's shadow as a wartime president. And so he's triggered in some way. And she recognized that he was lying to her. So she asked the question, did you collude with Israel? Did you and Israel conspire to go in and start this war? And he's put on the spot. There's an excellent pause here. Good acting and a good directing. Again, I'm not going to show you that part. It's part of the second season. I think it's the first episode of the second season. But this has implications to what I'm talking about with Michelle Obama and the rest of this video.
6 days ago,
again with the sixes,
this government met with representatives of the French and Israeli governments in a small village on the outskirts of Paris.
This happened historically. This is historically accurate, and I'll show you this in just a moment.
Where a document was signed.
So this is an excellent scene because she's realizing that the British do evil stuff. Like that the British are doing things that go against all the training and etiquette and all the things they pretend to be. I'm talking about the crown here, the British royal family, and all these, lords and the upper class in Britain. They claim to have various character qualities and all these things and learn to have etiquette and be honest. But you can see from her expression, excellent job here. She's realizing that evil's afoot, right? And this guy is just admitting to some raw stuff, right? Some stuff that's going to end up backfiring.
The Sèvres Protocol, which outlines plans for a coordinated offensive against Egypt, whereby...
And she's also realizing that he just lied to her, right? That he told her the official story, but she asked him these questions. He's put in a situation of lying to her, which is illegal, which he already just did, and now he's got to tell her the real story.
The Israeli army would attack the Egyptian army near the Suez Canal, thus allowing the intervention of Anglo-French forces.
Who else knows about this?
Senior members?
But not Parliament?
No.
Or the United Nations?
So she was approached by other people in the government who said, this guy's, he's off on his own thing, and you can't go this alone. You need a coalition of support. You need the United Nations. You need America. You need other countries. And this guy is triggered, and he's personal, right? He has a personal agenda here. And so she's aware of all this stuff because other people have told her this. And again, this historically happened.
And I am right about this fella. Do I have your support?
There's a long pause here. And then eventually, it's like a 20-second pause, which I'm not going to show you, again, for copyright reasons. But it's excellently done because you could see her wheels turning on what she's agreeing to, and then she says,
The Prime Minister always has the Sovereign's support.
And this is how evil proliferates. When somebody knows something is wrong, and again, this is a TV show account of this interaction. We don't know, how evil she already was or whatever it is. But what was done here was wrong and evil on so many levels. Historically, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of systemic abuse. When you're looking at institutionalized abuse, and they're trying to get at it, right, by attacking someone like Cuomo's or Trump's or somebody who really isn't a part of the old, rich, powerful, old money, hidden power in these things, like the Queen and these other powerful trillionaire families and things, that keep the institutionalized aspect of abuse going. So I'm going to show you how this is a historical pattern of behavior. The Suez Crisis, or the Second Arab-Israeli War, also called the tripartite aggression in the Arab world, and the Sinai War in Israel, was an invasion of Egypt in late 1956 by Israel, followed by the United Kingdom and France. The aims were to regain Western control of the Suez Canal and to remove Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. So this was regime change, right? This guy wouldn't play ball with the powers that be. He wouldn't be a puppet leader. He wanted to, have his own country, have his own sovereignty. And this part of the world, which we know, where the oil comes from, can't have that. And so Western power, Britain and France and European powers and Israel were a big part of that before, and then America took over, where we started to put in puppet leaders and bring down governments. And this is evil behavior. These aren't countries that are attacking any of us. They have resources that we need, and we want to buy them and control those resources. We want to own those resources, and so we have to control the political governments of these countries. And Britain used to do this, and America learned from Britain and took over this role of, basically neocolonialism. Going back to the Wikipedia entry, Nasser, who had just nationalized the canal. He took over the canal for his own country, which was in his own country. After the fighting had started, political pressure from the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Nations led to the withdrawal by the three invaders. The episode humiliated the United Kingdom and France and strengthened Nasser. And as it turns out, there was all kinds of economic issues. Britain had a huge economic crisis after this, and it was a complete debacle. But here's the key lines. It later became clear that Israel, France, and Britain had conspired to plan out the invasion. Now, I'm going to come back to this, but this is, the words they're using here is it's a conspiracy, which it was. You can see from what you saw in the Crown show, it was a conspiracy. It was something they conspired to pretend, Britain and France were going to come in as peacekeepers, right? And, everyone saw through it, and it's just from an old playbook. But when they call you a conspiracy theorist, or any of us, right? Well, there are real conspiracies. And this is where it costs people's lives and it costs lifestyle. I mean, there's real implications, negative implications to these conspiracies. Here is the Suez Canal here. And, again, a very strategic and important part of getting oil for the European countries. That's why France and Britain want to regain control. But then there was Operation Ajax, which is very similar, which was done by the CIA. And the CIA just recently admitted this back in 2013. But it happened in 1953, and pretty much everyone kind of knew that the CIA was responsible. Declassified documents reveal CIA role in 1953 Iranian coup. And what this was, this guy, Mossadegh, was a moderate leader, a good leader, who wanted to nationalize the oil industry in Iran. BP, British Petroleum, what became British Petroleum, developed the oil industry in Iran. And they were taking 80% of the profits and giving 20% back to Iran, which was not a very good deal for Iran. And he wanted to split it 50-50. And so because of that, the British got the American, the CIA, to take this guy out. And they did a number of things to get unrest going and create what was, an evil act, right, of getting rid of a popular leader, a moderate leader in Iran. And now you see the way Iran is. So they put in the Shah of Iran, who was a puppet, a brutal leader, right? He was this first guy. He was brutal, right, bad guy. And he ended up being, taken over. There was the whole Iranian hostage crisis, right? So this was a bad thing, very similar to what happened with the Suez Canal. And now everything that Iran represents as a problem, the Iranian government, came because there was interference by the CIA. They wrecked this country, which created havoc and difficulty there for years. And this has been well documented. This is, a fact, a historical fact, something that Britain was doing for so many years. America took over doing in 1950s. And then there was this. This was what just happened in 2011 with Gaddafi. And so what we were all told for years, what I was told growing up, was Gaddafi was a crazy, evil leader. He was a bad guy. And he was crazy. And he had to be, taken out at some point. And, that wasn't accurate. What I was told, what you were told, the Libyans were evil and Back to the Future. They were these mad terrorists, remember, in Back to the Future movies. And, there's all these things that we heard about Gaddafi. He seemed to be an eccentric person dressed up oddly. So we thought he was a bad guy. We were told he was a bad guy. But in 2011, I wasn't buying what my government was selling to me, certainly what the media was selling to me. So I was doing my own research, right? I was making videos at that time. And Salon, which is a liberal organization, came out and published this, that the British Parliament report details how NATO's 2011 war in Libya was based on lies. And it was based on lies. The lies were that Gaddafi was killing and torturing his people and he had to be taken out. And so this parliamentary report, which doesn't go far enough, but still it's a parliamentary report, says Gaddafi was not planning to massacre his civilians. That was a lie. This myth was exaggerated by rebels and Western governments, which based their intervention on little intelligence. So they knew it was a lie and did it anyway. The threat of Islamic extremists, which had no influence in the uprising, was ignored. And the NATO bombing made this threat even worse, giving ISIS a base in North Africa, France, which initiated the military intervention, was motivated by economic and political interests, not humanitarian ones. They split up Gaddafi's gold. What this was really about was Gaddafi wanted to sell oil in an Arab gold dinar. And I've covered this in so many videos. This is sort of well known by people who understand things on a more realistic basis, that he was pushing to sell oil for gold, and that would bring down the petrodollar and collapse the economy as we now know it. He was getting other countries to buy into this, so he had to be stopped because he was an economic threat. Not that he was doing anything wrong for himself or his people, but he was a threat to the global economy, the beastly economy, in America and Europe specifically. And so the United Nations made up some bogus stuff, and they went in and took this guy out, even though he was a very popular leader, and he had taken Africa from the poorest country in Africa to the richest country in Africa. I've talked about this so much. So what we knew about this guy, what we heard about this guy, wasn't true. MPS delivered damning verdict on David Cameron's Libya intervention. This is the report by Parliament, the House of Commons. Libya examination of intervention and collapse of UK's future policy options, which is kind of rich because they're the ones that taught America how to do this, right? I mean, many countries engaged in this, but America has always followed in the British Empire's wake, right? Has always, everything that we do is based in a system of divide and conquer and all these things. It's a part of colonialism and something that we learned as a British colony, and then when we rose to power, we took over the reins of this evil empire, at least we're the military behind it. Muammar Gaddafi has been dead 8 years, yet Libya is still at war with itself. What went wrong? Well, what always goes wrong when you do this? Gaddafi is gone, but Libya is more dangerous than ever thanks to the West. Many Libyans appear to back Gaddafi. And so this is an article about how he had overwhelming support, even though everyone said, or we were told, that he was a bad man and a bad leader. This part is our responsibility and our fault. This is the part of all this that's our responsibility and our fault. And so when, going back to the beginning when I was talking about how every group says, well, you've got a bunch of bad people in power, and if we get those people out of power and we put in our people, good people, people like us, it'll get better. And this is why that is false. This is why there's a weakness here in the collective, in the Muggle population, in the people who are at the bottom levels of the pyramid, who want to believe that our country and our system is great. The global system in our country specifically. USA, right? All these chants and things people say. We're the greatest country in the history of the planet. I mean, this is what's said by politicians in America and other places as well, but America specifically. And, politicians like Barack Obama and the Queen, like in this, the movie with the Queen, political figureheads have to do things like this to keep the beast going. And so we have this spin. We have the BS that we're told that our country is great and we're the good people. And we have a great system. And that's why we have the lifestyle, the lavish lifestyle that we have. Even though, you hear stuff like, well, 30% of the population lives on less than $1 a day and 50% on less than $2. And then you have all these other people, a lot of us included, who are living suburban lives, and we think everyone on the planet could live these lives. And I guess in some system that could be possible, not when there are people who are billionaires and trillionaires and royal people with 6.6 billion acres of land. I mean, all these things, right? But, maybe there would be a possibility that some number of people in the world, maybe 1 billion, maybe 2 billion people, human beings, could live the way that most people live in the suburbs if we had a good system. I don't know. Like, I can't, I have no way to figure that out, but I believe that that's possible. But not in the system that we have, which is a top-down system. And so for all of you who are in the truth community and all of the so-called sheeple and normies of people who want to believe that our system is good, there's just a few bad apples, are the problem. Because the people who run the system, and they've, created this problem, and they've created this spin, and they create patriotism and all these things, have been lying to us all for years, and they know that they have to glom other countries. They have to glom resources and sometimes fight wars, sometimes create crises, sometimes create pandemics, sometimes create whatever it is to keep the debt-based economic system going, because the system is not sustainable. Our current way of life, something we're 100% dependent on, is not sustainable. So they have to make up things like Gaddafi's a bad leader, or whatever, events that they have to create to go to these wars and to create the situation we have now, and tell you lies about it so you can still believe in your country, still believe in our way of life. Because if they told us the truth, then, the system would collapse. And all of us who are, unwilling to hear the truth, unwilling to see that we're a evil empire, I mean, that's what we are, as a nation, as a collection of nations, the wealthy nations, European nations, Israel, some of these other nations that are all colluding to keep other nations poor and to control their people and their country or whatever it is, right? And I think if most people were able to be strong enough to hear this, they would accept it, like I had to accept it, because, I knew this invasion of Libya was wrong. I could see the information. I could see the lies, right? And then I thought about it, because it's easy to blame Obama. It's easy to blame the UN. But when I thought about it, if Gaddafi was successful, he would possibly take down the global economy, at least wound it severely by getting rid of the petrodollar. The petrodollar is that countries have to convert their money, their currency, into dollars to buy oil, which keeps the dollar pegged, keeps the dollar being the world reserve currency. And if that didn't happen, if somebody was able to sell oil in something other than the dollar, especially one of these Middle Eastern countries, and the petrodollar collapsed, then the dollar would collapse, because the petrodollar is the dollar, and then the economy, American economy, would collapse, and then all these other economies would collapse with it. So even though Gaddafi was doing something that was his right as his leader to sell his oil in whatever he wanted to sell it in, they couldn't let that happen. And so this evil act, which destroyed these countries, we know what happens to these countries when there's regime change. We've seen it over and over. When you take away a country's government, no matter how evil or corrupt the government is, it descends into thuggery and civil war. And for maybe 100 years, the place is a mess, even longer, at least 100 years. Libya is going to be a disaster, as is Afghanistan and Iraq and these regime changed countries. All of these countries in South America and Africa and Middle East and these countries globally that there's been regime change and puppet leadership installed are a disaster. It's just bad there. They're wrecked. It's horrible stuff. I mean, you look into these countries and see what they look like before and after, and what they're like to live, and what the quality of life there that is, right? The UN did a report on Gaddafi's success. He was one of the few heads of a developing country that achieved the Millennium Development Goals early on. They were supposed to be achieved by 2015, and he had achieved them, most of them, 8 of them, including a high per capita income and education of the population and public and private partnerships. He got rid of his weapons of mass destruction, all these things. He had done a great job, but that didn't matter because, again, he chose to go against the global economy, and he was crushed. And now the country, think about how it was the highest per capita income for the citizens. It was around $10,000 a year, which is extremely high for Africa. And now it's half that or even less, and it's probably going to continually plummet, right? And so the country's getting poorer and poorer. And this is a country that's rich in natural resources, things like lithium and all these minerals and things, oil, of course. And Gaddafi had a lot of gold. And so by going in there and taking over his country, by going in there and having regime change, and then turning it over to thugs, which is what inevitably happens, and we see this over and over again. And again, the reason that we went in there, the reason America and the United Nations and France and England went in there was because of lies. Gaddafi wasn't going to kill and torture his people. It wasn't a humanitarian crisis. It had nothing to do with any of those things. That's, no, that's a fact. Those are lies. But even if he was going to do that, and he wasn't, right? Even if he was going to do that, still that wasn't, something to do with us, because there's a lot of thugs out there, a lot of bad leaders, and the country itself has to evolve out of that, because it's something that it's their problem, right? You can't have some hero, and we're not heroes. That's the way it's always portrayed, that we're being the heroes. When we go into these countries that haven't attacked us, that aren't a threat to us, and yet we keep on taking over countries, destroying their governments, and it's a disaster, and it's horrible for them. And, there's all these lies that we hear to make these things acceptable. And there's conspiracies, real conspiracies here. And, years later, they'll be in Wikipedia. Like I just read, all right, it's coming out now about Libya, and people have already admitted, the CIA already admitted what happened in the, Operation Ajax and the crisis there in the Suez Canal. I mean, that was in the 40s, the early 50s. I mean, these events that happened years and years ago, yeah, it's admitted to. But when you called your government out on these things back then, you would be ostracized and all of these other things. And that's what's happening to all of us. But the reality of it is we have to accept at some point that our system is deeply flawed because of the unequal distribution of wealth, but more importantly, the disconnect to God and the complete focus on material pleasure, selfishness, and egoism, and disconnecting from God. And our soul is a big part of that. Like, we need to be better people. That's why I talk about the heartfulness meditation. It is a system to help remedy this problem. That people then connect to God internally. They gain a conscience. They gain empathy. They feel connected to other people across the globe. They look at everyone as their brothers and sisters. That's why I say that in the beginning. Because we're all brothers and sisters. We're all in this thing together. And so, yeah, there's sucky people. Suckier than us, right? Suckier than me. There's people that are better than me, right? There's people who are closer to God. There's people that are nicer people. And there's people that are worse. But it doesn't matter. We're all in this together. Like, I can, try to grade myself on a curve and say, look at all these other people that are worse than me. All right, yeah, sure. But what difference does that make? Because like I said in my other video, spirituality, your relationship to God, isn't judged on a curve. It's judged on your soul. Your soul and other, beings, divine beings, etheric beings, and God, they're the ones who, in a sense, judge you. But it's already, it's not even there isn't some arbitrary type of, all right, let's, you did this, this, and this, go do this. It's not like that. I mean, it is a system where everything's accounted for, everything's automatic, and you have to cleanse and get rid of these poor tendencies, negative qualities and tendencies, liberate yourself from your earthly bondage, and move on to a higher level of existence. And when you do that, you make the world a better place while you're doing that. And so when you have a lot of people doing that, then you'll see a change in the system. But as long as everybody's going in the wrong direction, going away from their soul's path, it isn't the elite, it isn't, just this group of people or that group of people. It's all of us. And the planet's going to continuously suck. And like I said before, you can't think that your leaders are going to do it. Like, your leaders are going to get it or they're going to change, because they're not. They're not higher than you. They just have a position of power in this construct, in this, governmental and earthly construct. They're not really more advanced. They just have power on planet Earth. Spiritually, they've regressed, right? They're remedial. They've gone backwards. And so you can't count on them. You have to change. Like, you have to do it better. Like, each of us has to dive deeper internally, change ourselves from the inside, get rid of undesirable qualities that block our path and access to God, and then manifest a better world together. That's why I say only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.